June 1944. Refusing a direct order on the front line usually meant a court-martial and a firing squad. But Warrant Officer Voronin looked the shell-shocked battalion commander in the eye and gave a firm no. Standing before him was a German Ferdinand, an invulnerable fortress that had turned 3 of our tanks into piles of burning scrap in mere minutes. Attacking it head-on was suicide. Instead of a heroic death, the crew decided on a gamble that would have made staff officers' hair stand on end. They did something forbidden by every armored warfare manual. They voluntarily turned their machine into a coffin on tracks, stripped of its engine. Why were tankers greasing their tracks with lard? And how could 30 tons of steel sneak up on the enemy quieter than a falling leaf? Watch to the end. This story proves that sometimes madness is the only way to survive. June 1944. Operation Bagration is already breaking the Wehrmacht's back, scraping the Nazi plague off the map kilometer by kilometer. But here, near Vitebsk, the offensive has choked on its own blood. The air hangs heavy with the greasy, sickly sweet stench of burnt diesel and roasted meat. A scent impossible to confuse with anything else. It is the smell of a stalemate. The road, a strategically vital artery for moving reserves, has turned into a graveyard. Ahead, at a distance of 1.5 kilometers, the road rises up a gentle hill that dominates the swampy lowlands. There, at the summit, death lies in wait. A German self-propelled gun, the Ferdinand. 65 tons of gloomy Teutonic genius, 200 millimeters of frontal armor. This is not a tank. It is a mobile pillbox, invulnerable to our standard artillery, driven into the ground like a nail into a coffin lid. In the morning fog, which is as thick as sour milk here, 3 blackened husks loom. 3 T-34s. They tried to slip past this cursed sector 10 minutes ago. Now they are just piles of scrap metal, sending black pillars of smoke into the whitish sky. The first tank lost its turret. The detonation of the ammo rack tore it off and tossed it 10 meters into the ditch, like a hat blown off a head by a gust of wind. The second buried its nose in a crater, burning lazily. Red smoke billows from the open driver's hatch. The third, bringing up the rear, took a hit to the engine compartment and froze in the middle of the road, blocking the way for the living. The Ferdinand does not fire often. It doesn't need to. Its weapon, the 88mm PaK-43/2 cannon, works with the rhythm of a factory press and the inevitability of a guillotine. A shell weighing 10 kilograms leaves the barrel at a speed of 1,000 meters per second. The physics here are simple and merciless. At such a range, our shell doesn't even have time to realize it has hit armor before it shatters into dust, leaving only a scratch on the cemented steel of the Krupp factories. It was like throwing a stone at a cliff, and the Germans' return blow turns Soviet steel into punched tin. The infantry is pressed into the liquid, cold mud. You can't raise your head. Any movement, any careless gesture, provokes an instant reaction from the hill. Inside the casemate of the German tank destroyer, there are no humans. There are mathematicians of war. They calculate trajectories. They wait. The silence presses on the ears harder than the roar of battle. This is the anatomy of fear. You hear the blood pounding in your temples, the creak of the sling on your neighbor's rifle, the squelch of mud under a boot. A second of silence weighs a ton. In a crater filled ankle-deep with dirty water, an infantry lieutenant is hunched over. His face is gray like this earth, his eyes wandering, hands shaking as he tries to light a soggy hand-rolled cigarette. He tears the paper, and tobacco spills onto his wet knees. He sees everything! The lieutenant breaks into a hoarse scream, jabbing a finger toward the foggy hill. That devil sees through the earth, through the fog. We're like bugs on a plate to him. Beside him lies an older sergeant, pressing his helmet to the ground. He doesn't look at the commander. He looks at the burning tanks. He knows that a commander's hysteria is more dangerous than a bullet. Panic is contagious. It spreads faster than typhus. "Comrade Lieutenant, keep your head down," the sergeant grumbles dully, without unclenched teeth. "You don't understand." The lieutenant grabs the sergeant by his wet, quilted jacket. "We're sending boys to the slaughter. 3 crews. 3. Burned in a minute and a half. I heard them screaming on the radio."
"This isn't war, it's a shooting gallery. We are targets. Cardboard targets."
The sound of an explosion somewhere to the right makes them both flinch and press deeper into the mud. Shrapnel whizzes overhead, shearing off bush branches. The Ferdinand is not sleeping. It is reminding them of its presence. It controls every meter of space in front of it. The field of fire is perfect. Any vehicle that risks coming out of the tree line onto the road will turn into a torch before the driver can shift gears. The logistics of death in this sector are flawless. The Germans chose a position that is impossible to flank. Swamp on the left, dense forest on the right, impassable for vehicles. The only way is straight along the road, head-on, into the barrels of caliber 88 millimeters. It is a dead end. A blind, concrete dead end. Another gust of wind brings the smell of burning from the third tank. The ammunition starts to cook off there. Dull pops inside the hole sound like hammer blows on an empty barrel. The turret jumps slightly, and a sheaf of sparks erupts from under the turret ring. It is the machine's agony. The lieutenant covers his ears with his hands and rocks from side to side. "We need to pull back. We need to call in air support. Otherwise we'll all die here," he mutters, smearing mud over his face. "We have nothing against that beast. Nothing. Our guns don't scratch it. We're throwing peas against a wall." But there will be no air support. The weather is unflyable. Fog has pinned the Sturmovix to their airfields. The artillery fell behind on the march, bogged down in the Belarusian swamps. The infantry is left one-on-one with the armored monster. The inertia of fear has paralyzed the men. No one wants to be the next posthumous hero. War here is devoid of romance. It is simply dirty work for survival, where the odds are rapidly rolling towards zero. The hill is silent. The Ferdinand waits. Its crew knows. The Russians won't retreat. The Russians will try again. And then the 88 caliber will speak again, turning the living into the dead, and the whole into fragments. The road to Vitebsk is closed by a steel barrier, the key to which is lost in mud and blood. In this labyrinth of death, no exit is visible, only an entrance, and it leads straight into the crosshairs. The roar of a diesel engine tears the cottony silence of the swamp. From the undergrowth, breaking bushes and churning liquid clay with its tracks, a squat silhouette crawls out. It is not a tank. The machine has no turret. The long barrel of the gun sticks straight out of the sloped front plate like a wasp's stinger. An Su-85, a self-propelled artillery installation. A hunter created on the chassis of a T-34, but stripped of its rotating head for the sake of a more powerful cannon. The machine stops 5 meters from the lieutenant's trench. They don't cut the engine. The 12 cylinders of the V-234 idle, and the ground under the infantry's feet begins to tremble slightly. The vibration transmits to the soles of their boots, into their spines, into their teeth. From the open commander's hatch, a head in a ribbed tanker's helmet pokes out. Warrant Officer Voronin. He is over 30, but the war has erased his age, leaving only deep folds around his mouth and a gaze that scans the terrain with the indifference of a pathologist. He doesn't look at the lieutenant. He looks at the smoke rising from the tank carcasses on the road. His eyes narrow. He is counting. 3 machines destroyed. The interval between kills, less than a minute. Distance to target, 1.5 kilometers. The battalion commander runs up to the self-propelled gun. His greatcoat is splattered with mud, his face crimson, his voice blown out. He grabs a handle on the armor, trying to shout over the engine noise.
"Why have you stopped, warrant officer?" the captain screams, spitting saliva. "Get moving! We need to distract the German. While he's busy with you, the infantry will rush through. Attack on the move! That is an order!" Voronin slowly shifts his gaze to the officer. In that look, there is no fear of rank. There is only the cold calculation of a veteran who has seen too many deaths caused by stupidity. He is in no hurry to follow the command. In the army, there are regulations, and there is the law of survival. And right now, they contradict each other. The warrant officer climbs out of the hatch, jumping down into the mud. His boots squelch. He walks right up to the captain. The height difference is not in the warrant officer's favor, but he is the one applying the pressure. Distract him. Voronin's voice is quiet, but hard as the strike of a bolt carrier. "Comrade Captain, do you want me to burn beautifully, or do you want me to kill this bastard?" "Are you debating orders?" The captain grabs at his holster. Hysteria covers him completely. Men are dying, the offensive is stalled, and this tanker is stalling for time. "You'll be court-martialed. Forward, I said. Step on the gas and hit him head-on." Voronin doesn't even look at the officer's hand on the holster. He turns to his machine and slaps his palm against the sloped armor of the casemate. The sound is dull, metallic. "Look here," the warrant officer says, poking a finger hard into the steel. "I have 45 millimeters of armor here. 45. And that kraut on the hill has a gun that stitches through 200 millimeters from 2 kilometers away. If I go out onto the road head-on, I will live exactly 3 seconds. First second, he sees me. Second, the gunner turns the hand wheel. Third, the slug enters my engine and exits through the transmission. The crew won't even have time to get scared. We'll turn into ground meat." "So what do you suggest? Sit here until winter?" The captain lowers his hand, but he is shaking with tension. "The Su-85 is not a breakthrough tank," Voronin enunciates, looking straight into the captain's eyes. "It is a tool. A sniper rifle on tracks. It doesn't have a turret to turn its head. It doesn't have the armor to take a punch. But it has a gun and speed. If you want me to destroy him, I don't need heroism. I need calculation." Voronin pulls a greasy pack of cigarettes from his pocket, lights up, shielding the flame with a cupped hand. The smoke mixes with the fog. He's sitting on the high ground. He sees everything. But he's deaf. The warrant officer continues, nodding toward the German position. "He listens for our motors. As soon as I gas it on the climb, he'll hear me before he sees me and greet me with an armor-piercing shell." "Do you have a plan?" The captain cools down a little, realizing that screaming won't pierce the Ferdinand's armor. "Give me an hour," Voronin says. "I need to crawl forward, see for myself, with my eyes, not through a periscope. Assess the angles, find where his blind spot is. I won't lead men into a frontal attack. That's not war, that's suicide. And I didn't sign up to be a suicide." The captain is silent. He looks at the burning tanks on the road. There, inside the metal, his men are burning out. Men he sent into the same attack half an hour ago. He realizes the warrant officer is right. It is madness to repeat the same action, hoping for a different result. War does not forgive stubbornness. It punishes it with death. "An hour," the captain says through clenched teeth.
Exactly 60 minutes, Voronin. If that German barn isn't shut up in an hour, I will personally shoot you in front of the formation for cowardice.
Understood? Yes, sir, the warrant officer replies indifferently, tossing the butt into the mud and crushing it with his heel. In an hour, there will be a result. Either I die, or he does. There is no third option. Voronin turns to the crew who had been listening tensely to the conversation, leaning out of their hatches. The boys' faces are pale. They heard about the 3 seconds of life. The driver, a very young guy with grease smeared on his cheek, swallows convulsively. The gunner wipes his glasses with a rag, his hands trembling slightly. "Crew, listen to my command," Voronin barks, instantly switching to commander mode. "Kill the engine. There must be silence, like in a grave." The diesel sneezes and goes silent. A deafening silence falls, in which only the distant wind and the crackle of burning metal on the road can be heard again. This silence is scarier than the roar. It means waiting. The warrant officer walks up to the machine, checks the fastening of the spare tracks on the side. Everything must be perfect. In a duel with a Ferdinand, there are no small details. If something clanks at the wrong time, it will be the sound of a funeral bell. "Ivan," he addresses the driver, "check the steering clutches. Make sure they work softly, no jerking. If you jerk the machine, we're corpses." "Understood, Comrade Warrant Officer," the driver whispers. "Petrov," Voronin looks at the gunner. "Wipe the optics with alcohol. Don't spare it. I want to see the rivets on his armor. We will only have one shot. No right to miss. We aren't at a shooting range. They won't let us reload." Refusing to execute a suicidal order is not mutiny. It is the highest form of discipline in war. It is preserving a combat unit for that single moment when it can strike a fatal blow. Voronin knows. Heroism isn't dying for the motherland. Heroism is making the enemy die for his Führer. He takes binoculars and hangs them around his neck. The heavy optical instrument cools his chest through his tunic. Now begins the hardest part. Not the fight, the preparation for the fight. A chess match where the stakes are the lives of 4 men against 65 tons of German steel. Voronin looks back at the infantry lieutenant, who is still sitting in the crater. "Don't wet your pants, infantry," he throws out. "We're about to give him a physics exam." The warrant officer takes a step toward no man's land, into the place where the safe zone ends and the domain of death begins. His figure dissolves into the bushes. The hunt has begun. But this is not a hunt with hounds. It is the hunt of a wolf creeping toward prey against the wind. Cold calculation against brute force. Patience against armor. The clock has started counting down. 60 minutes to eternity. Warrant Officer Voronin slides into the liquid, oily mud of no man's land. Here, war ceases to be strategy and becomes physiology. The stench is unbearable, a mixture of swamp rot, burnt TNT, and the sweetish smell of decay that eats into the pores of your skin forever. His tunic is instantly soaked with icy slurry, but the cold is the last thing the scout thinks about. The cold keeps you alert. Heat here only comes from burning armor. He moves in a low crawl, centimeter by centimeter, pressing himself into the earth. Every movement is calculated. Elbows work like levers, knees slide over roots and shrapnel. If he raises his head higher than a hummock of withered grass, a German machine gunner will cut him down with a single burst. Death here hangs on the tip of a blade of grass. Ahead, 50 meters away, lies a shattered German helmet, and beside it, what remains of its owner. Voronin crawls past without even blinking. It's just landscape. Decorations in a theater of the absurd.
He reaches a small mound overgrown with sparse bushes,
An ideal vantage point.
Voronin slowly, infinitely slowly, takes out his binoculars. The lenses are clean, scratch-free. He presses the eyepieces to his eyes, trying not to breathe on the glass so it doesn't fog up. The world narrows to a circle with crosshairs. The Ferdinand stands a kilometer away on the dominant height, sheltered behind the remains of a stone wall of some barn. The position is chosen brilliantly. The field of fire covers the only road like a gate. The German engineers knew their business. The frontal armor of the tank destroyer looks straight at the entrance to the hollow. Anyone who pokes their nose onto the embankment will end up in the sights. This isn't just a defense. It is a predator's ambush, one that knows the trails of its prey. The fog is still dense, like cotton wool. Visibility is 200 meters. Beyond that, everything blurs into a milky haze. But Voronin sees the main thing. The German machine stands motionless. Engines off.
No one is leaning out of the casemate. Hatches battened down.
This means one thing. They are listening. The crew of the Ferdinand has turned into one big hearing aid. In conditions of poor visibility, ears are more important than eyes. They are waiting for the characteristic low growl of a tank diesel V2. The sound of a Soviet motor cannot be confused with anything else. It is coarse, rumbling, audible for kilometers. As soon as a Russian tank starts up and moves, the acoustics will give it away completely. The German gunner will simply aim the gun at the sound, lead the target, and fire into the fog. 88 millimeters will find the target by ear. No chance to slip through. Noise is a death sentence. Voronin lowers the binoculars and looks at the road in front of him. Mud, ruts, puddles with rainbow oil swirls. He studies the terrain not like an infantryman looking for cover, but like a mechanic. His gaze slides along the profile of the road. From the Soviet lines to the German hill, there is a barely noticeable downward slope, 3 or 4 degrees. For a pedestrian, it's a flat surface. For a truck, it's nothing. But for a tracked vehicle weighing 30 tons, it's physics. A puzzle begins to assemble in the warrant officer's head. He sees vectors of force, gravity, inertia, mass. The road goes downhill right to the point where it curves, opening up the flank of the German position. The distance is about 800 meters of descent. If you remove friction, a body will begin to accelerate. Voronin raises the binoculars again. He checks the road surface. The ground is hard, packed, with a layer of liquid mud on top that will act as a lubricant. No rocks, no craters on the track itself. The Germans fired precisely at vehicles, not spoiling the roadbed, which might be useful to them later. The plan is born not from a combat training manual, but from a school physics textbook and peasant ingenuity. If the engine is death, then the engine must be excluded from the equation. If noise is a target marker, then they need to become quieter than the wind. The Su-85 weighs almost 30 tons. If you push it, it will roll. Gravity is free and, most importantly, absolutely silent. It has no exhaust, no clanking pistons, no transmission whine. Only the rustle of steel on mud. Voronin feels cold sweat running down his back, but now it isn't fear. It's the thrill of a gambler who found a marked card in the deck. It is madness, an adventure for which the Academy would give him an F and send him to the madhouse. Rolling in neutral straight into the jaws of the Ferdinand, without the ability to maneuver, without the ability to reverse quickly. A one-way ticket. If the machine gets stuck halfway, they will turn into a stationary target in the middle of a field. They will be shot up like a tin can. But there is no other way out. A frontal attack will guarantee death. Flanking is impossible. Only this corridor of death remains, through which they must walk on tiptoe. The warrant officer peers at the German position one more time. The muzzle brake of the German gun is looking slightly to the left, toward the forest, from where they expect infantry. The right side of the casemate is covered by bushes, but there is a gap between the branches. If they get within 400 meters, they can see the side profile. The armor is thinner there. 80 millimeters, that is penetrable. From a distance of 400 meters, the 85 caliber will stitch through the side and cause the ammo rack to detonate. The wind tears the veil of fog for a second, and Voronin sees a glint on the optics of the enemy sight. The German is not sleeping. He is scanning the sector. Time is working against them. Soon the sun will rise higher, the fog will dissipate, and then the magic will disappear. Only the bare steppe and the superiority of German optics will remain. Voronin starts crawling back. Now his movements are faster. The decision is made. A new variable has appeared in the battle equation: silence. This will not be a tank duel. It will be a murder with a dagger in a dark room. The geometry of the landscape against the might of Krupp's steel. 30 tons of weight against the hearing of German acoustics. He crawls, and mud packs behind his collar, but he already feels the machine rolling. He hears that sound which doesn't exist yet, the soft crunch of gravel under the road wheels. It will be the quietest attack in the history of the regiment, or the quietest death. The return to his own lines takes an eternity. Every meter back seems longer than a kilometer. Muscles ache, breathing is ragged. But a stopwatch is already clicking in the warrant officer's head. The plan is insane, but madness is the only thing the Germans aren't ready for. They are expecting war by the rules. They are expecting the roar of engines. They will get a ghost. Voronin slides into the trench to his crew. His face is smeared with soot and clay, eyes burning with a feverish shine. The driver and gunner look at him with hope and horror simultaneously. They see that the commander has come up with something, and they know that this something is likely something they won't like. But it's a chance not to burn in 3 seconds.
Pack it up,
Voronin wheezes, spitting out sand.
We're going for a walk.
Where to, comrade warrant officer? The driver goes pale.
Down.
Voronin nods toward the German.
We're going to pay him a visit,
but quietly, like mice.
We're going to play bowling, boys, and we are the ball.
Voronin jumps back into the cover where his crew, bundled into a ball of nerves, awaits the verdict. The earth here is soaked with anticipation, sticky and cold like morning dew on armor. The driver, gunner, and loader look up at the commander. The same question reads in their eyes. Are we going to die today? They have seen how others burn, and they know their turn is coming. Voronin wipes his dirty hands on his breeches, slowly lights a second cigarette, and blows smoke toward the German hill.
Listen to my command.
The warrant officer's voice sounds quiet, almost a whisper. But in this silence, every word weighs more than a shell.
We are not going to attack. We are going to roll.
The crew exchanges glances. The driver, a young guy with frightened eyes, furrows his brow, trying to digest what he heard. Roll, comrade warrant officer? He asks again, and his voice breaks. You mean back up?
No.
Voronin squats and draws a diagram with a twig on the wet clay of the trench.
We kill the engine. Completely. Turn everything off. Take it out of gear. And we roll forward down the slope. In neutral.
A silence hangs, dense and ringing.
Only the distant thud of a mortar can be heard. The idea seems so wild, so contrary to all tank warfare regulations, that the brain refuses to accept it. A combat vehicle without an engine is a coffin. It is 30 tons of dead iron, devoid of life, maneuver, and chance of salvation. You're joking. Gunner Petrov takes off his glasses and starts nervously wiping them with the edge of his tunic. Comrade Commander, that's suicide. Without a motor, we're a target. If we stop in the middle of the field, they'll shoot us like in a gallery. We won't even be able to turn the turret. Hell, the hull! And with a motor, we are guaranteed corpses. Voronin cuts him off harshly. He pokes the twig into the hill drawn on the ground. Listen here. The German is listening. He has acoustics guys sitting there, catching every sneeze. We start up. We take a slug in the forehead. Drive in first gear. They hear the tracks. The only chance to get close to him within firing range is to become a ghost. Voronin speaks quickly, chopping his words, hammering his insane logic into his subordinates' heads. There's a slope, 4 degrees, maybe 5. That's enough. Our Susie weighs 30 tons. If we push her, gravity will do the rest. Physics, 5th grade. We will be a heavy stone rolling down the mountain. No sound, no exhaust, no vibration. The fog will hide us, and the wind noise will drown out the rustle of the tracks. We'll roll up to him to 400 meters, point blank. And then... What if there's mud? The driver interrupts, his face pale as chalk. If it's sticky, we'll stop halfway, and that's it. Neither forward nor back. We'll just sit and wait while they burn us. The mud is liquid, Voronin parries. It's like oil, lubricant. The tracks will go like on ice. I checked. The ruts are packed, hard underneath. We won't get stuck if we don't twitch. The main thing is to get the beast moving at the start. The infantry will help push. The loader, a big man who had been silent until now, spits to the side. It's a gamble, Commander. Pure gamble. They'll court-martial us if we survive. Regulations forbid combat with a killed engine. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. Regulations were written by those drinking tea at headquarters right now. Voronin snaps back angrily. And we're the ones who have to burn here. I don't give a damn about a court-martial. I care about punching through his side. The Ferdinand has a blind spot if you come from below. He isn't expecting us without sound. He's expecting the roar of a diesel. We'll fool his ears, and when he sees us, it will be too late. The crew is silent. They look at their commander, and in their eyes, fear begins to give way to something else. A wicked, desperate excitement. It is a plan of the doomed, but it gives a ghostly chance. It is Russian roulette, where instead of a revolver, there is a 30-ton tank destroyer, and instead of a bullet, silence. Imagine you're on a sled, Voronin continues, changing his tone to a calmer one. Did you ride sleds in childhood? So we'll ride. Only our hill is deadly. Mechanic, your job is to keep the steering straight. Don't brake. Under no circumstances touch the steering clutches. Let it roll itself. Inertia is our strength. Gunner, set the sights beforehand. As soon as we stop, you will have 1 second for fine-tuning. 1. And if he spots us earlier? The gunner asks quietly. He won't, Voronin lies confidently, though he knows the chances are 50-50. He's looking over the fog, and we're going underneath. We'll be lower than the grass, quieter than water. It is engineering madness, using gravity instead of the 500 horsepower of a V2 diesel, turning a combat vehicle into a giant scooter. The risk is extreme. Any bump, any stump, any hole, and the machine will lose momentum, stop,
and turn into a monument to its own stupidity. But that is the calculation. The German officer sitting in the Ferdinand's casemate studied at an academy. He knows tactics. He knows the specs of the T-34 and Su-85. He knows that tanks don't fly and don't drive without motors. He is ready for everything except this. "Well, what do you say?" Voronin scans his men. "Do we burn here like rats in a barrel, or do we risk it?" The driver exhales, clenching his fists until his knuckles turn white. "Let's risk it, Comrade Warrant Officer. It can't get any worse." "That's the spirit," Voronin nods. "All right then. Now we strip everything extra from the machine. Buckets, cables, crates, anything that might clank. The armor must be naked. Grease the road wheels with heavy grease until they shine. Check the tracks. Inspect every link. If even one squeaks, I will personally strangle you, if the German doesn't get to it first." The plan is accepted. It is no longer a discussion. It is a combat mission. Fear hasn't gone anywhere. It just changed form, turning from paralyzing terror into cold concentration. Now everything depends on mechanics, on the force of friction, on the heaviness of the earth pulling all objects down. Voronin looks at the Suzy. Now it doesn't seem like a formidable combat machine to him, but a fragile mechanism dependent on thousands of trifles. One squeak, death. One stone under a track, death. Mud that is too thick, death. But if the physics work, if mass multiplied by gravitational acceleration does its job, then they will become legends. Or corpses. The line between these concepts in war is thinner than cigarette paper. "Let's get to work," the warrant officer commands. "We have 15 minutes for prep. Make the tank invisible. Time starts now." The crew begins to move. Bustle is replaced by sharp, practiced movements. War is work. Heavy, dirty, deadly work. And now they have to fulfill the strangest order of their lives. Force 30 tons of steel to become lighter than down and quieter than a sleeping child's breath. Gravity cocks the hammer. Inertia prepares to strike. The hunt enters the execution phase. The Su-85 is a noisy machine by nature. It is 30 tons of steel created for rumbling, clanking, and roaring. In standard mode, it rattles like a rock crusher. The tracks grind the soil, links beat against the drive sprockets, the engine roars, vibrating the air. But now these sounds are traitors. The crew's task is to achieve the impossible. Turn this thundering factory on wheels into a shadow. A technical vivisection begins. Voronin gives a command with a gesture. No more words. Any voice, even a whisper in this damp fog, could be amplified by the acoustics of the hollow and carried to the German listeners. Work proceeds in silent movie mode, where every movement is filled with deadly meaning. First, all external equipment flies off the armor. The canvas bucket that usually dangles on the stern and clanks over every bump falls into the mud with a dull slap. Next go the crates with spare parts. Inside them are wrenches and screwdrivers that would stage a concert while rolling. Gone. The tow cable, a steel snake as thick as an arm, is unhooked. It is heavy work. The cable weighs dozens of kilograms. It is slippery with oil and rain. The loader and mechanic lower it to the ground carefully so as not to bang the metal eyelets against the armor. If steel hits steel now, that ring will become a funeral toll. The machine is undressing. It becomes naked, predatory, stripped of everything domestic, superficial. Only the function of killing remains: hull, chassis, gun. The dirtiest stage begins. Greasing. Everything in stock is used. Heavy grease, waste oil, gun fat. The driver opens cans with a knife. Thick, dark ointment smelling of oil becomes the crew's main weapon in the upcoming duel. Voronin personally supervises the process. They aren't just greasing friction points. They are greasing everything that might make a sound. Road wheels, idlers, drive sprockets, special attention to the tracks. The links are 500 millimeters of cast steel. They connect with steel pins. In motion, metal rubs against metal, emitting a characteristic high-pitched squeak and crunch. The Germans know this song of the T-34 by heart. The crew packs heavy grease into the gaps between the links. Arms elbow-deep in fatty lubricant. Faces in black streaks. They literally drown the running gear in oil. The idea is simple. Create an oil cushion on which metal will slide without direct contact.
This contradicts all operating instructions. Sand will stick to such grease, turning into an abrasive that will eat the pins in 100 kilometers of marching. But they don't need to drive 100 kilometers. They need to drive 800 meters. And what happens to the chassis afterward doesn't matter. If they don't pass these meters, they won't need the chassis anymore. Inside the self-propelled gun, the atmosphere thickens to the limit. Here, in the cramped fighting compartment, sandwiched between armor plates, silence presses on the eardrums harder than a pressure change. The ban on talking is absolute. Communication shifts to the level of instincts and agreed signs. A slap on the shoulder, attention. A clenched fist, stop. Splayed fingers, distance. Gunner Petrov checks the aiming mechanisms of the D5S cannon. The hand wheels rotate softly, but he pours oil over the gears from an oil can anyway. The barrel must move like clockwork, literally, like on oil. If the mechanism jams or a gear tooth squeaks at the decisive moment, there will be no shot. He wipes the optics of the TSH-15 sight with a clean rag until it is perfectly transparent. Not a speck of dust, not a spot of condensation. Through this lens, he will look into the eyes of death. The loader prepares the shell. He takes an 85mm unitary round, BR-365, from the ammo rack. It is a blunt-nosed, armor-piercing shell with a ballistic cap. Weight, 9 kilograms, 200 grams. The loader inspects the casing. It must be clean, without dents or dirt, to enter the breech without delay. He wipes it with an oily rag. The metal of the shell cools his hands. This piece of steel is the only argument the Ferdinand will understand. The loader places the shell on his knees, hugging it like a child. Putting it back in the rack is forbidden. Extra noise when retrieving it. He will hold it in his hands until the very end of the descent.
Voronin checks the hatches. The rubber seals have hardened with time. He greases their edges so there is no clank when closing. Then he checks the commander's cupola periscopes. Vision is life. Every crew member is now part of a mechanism. There are no people. There are functions. Levers are an extension of the mechanic's nerves. Optics are the gunner's new eyes. The gun breech is an extension of the loader's hands. They merge with the machine into a single organism. Fear goes deep inside, driven under the cortex of consciousness. On the surface, only extreme concentration remains. Cold sweat on the forehead isn't wiped away. There is no time for that. The outside world ceases to exist. There are only the insides of the Su-85, smelling of grease, gunpowder, and male sweat. And there is an external enemy, invisible, but felt by every cell. The check is finished. The machine is turned into a clot of oil.
Everything that could rattle lies in the mud outside. Everything that must move is greased to excess. The Su-85 stands on the edge of the slope, ready to surrender to gravity. It looks like a predator flattening its ears before a jump, only the jump will be in slow motion. Voronin looks at his boys. In the gloom of the fighting compartment, only the whites of eyes on grimy faces are visible. A nod. Ready. They understand what is about to happen. They are voluntarily locking themselves in a steel box that in a minute will begin an uncontrolled slide into the abyss. There is no way back. No brakes, no engine. There is only the inertia of 30 tons of mass and a mad hope in Russian ingenuity. The warrant officer raises his hand. The driver puts his hands on the levers, but doesn't pull them. He just feels the metal with the skin of his palms. Feet are removed from the pedals. The steering clutches are free. The machine stands only due to static friction and, perhaps, the crew's prayers. The infantry outside is already ready to put their shoulders to the rear plate. Just one impulse is needed. One push to disturb the balance and start the chain reaction of motion. The silence before the start becomes physically dense, viscous. A second stretches into eternity. Time freezes before falling off a cliff. 24 infantrymen dig their boots into the sodden clay. Hands slide on the cold, wet armor of the rear plate. Men wheeze with effort, veins on their necks bulge, faces turn red, transforming into masks of extreme physical exertion. 30 tons of dead mass. 30 tons of inert metal that has grown into the ground and does not wish to move without the help of 500 diesel horses. But the diesel is silent. Now only muscle power and the law of universal gravitation are working. And heave! And push! The infantry platoon commander hisses through his teeth, trying not to raise his voice. The Su-85 shudders. It is an almost imperceptible movement, a millimeter shift, when the force of static friction finally loses to the force of pressure. The tracks, heavily greased, make the first rotation. The steel pins of the links softly engage the drive sprocket without emitting the usual metallic clang. The grease works. The machine, as if reluctantly, peels off the ground. Slowly. Monstrously slowly. Speed less than a walking pace. The first meter is overcome in an eternity. The infantry continues to push, slipping in the mud, falling to their knees, but not letting go of the armor. They push the self-propelled gun to the edge of the slope, to where the degree of descent becomes critical. Inside the fighting compartment, the crew freezes. They don't breathe. They have turned into hearing. The driver, Ivan, clings to the control levers but doesn't pull them back. His fingers are white from tension. Instinct screams at him. Start it! Gas it! His body remembers that a tank should roar and vibrate, but now the machine floats in silence. It is an unnatural sensation, like you are in a coffin being lowered into a grave on ropes. She's going, Voronin whispers, with his lips alone pressed to the vision block. The infantry falls behind. The slope catches the 30-ton carcass. Gravity comes into its own. Now it is a fall. A controlled fall into the abyss. Outside, the world disappears. Fog, thick and dense as sour milk, envelops the hull. Visibility is zero. The periscopes show only a murky gray veil. The mechanic drives the machine blindly, orienting only by his internal gyroscope and memory of the terrain they studied an hour ago. The sensation of sliding along a razor's edge. The slightest mistake, the slightest turn the wrong way, and the track will slip into the ditch. Then the end.
The silence inside the machine is not absolute. It is filled with micro sounds that in normal combat aren't heard over the roar of shots in the motor. Now, every rustle sounds like an explosion. Crunch. Under the right track, a dry branch breaks or gravel is hit. The sound is dry, sharp, piercing. It seems to the crew that this crack is audible in Berlin. Gunner Petrov shudders with his whole body, hitting his shoulder against the gun breech. He freezes, afraid to move, expecting that now the armor will split from the impact of a German shell. "Quiet," Voronin hisses, not tearing himself away from the observation device. "Don't twitch." But no impact follows. The fog muffles sounds, scatters them, preventing them from reaching German ears. The Ferdinand on the hill is still blind and deaf. The machine gains speed. Inertia grows. At first, it was the movement of a snail. Now, it is a jog. 5 kilometers per hour. 7. Gravity pulls them down, to the foot of the hill, straight into the kill zone. The mechanic feels the tracks start to swim on the mud. Grip on the ground is unreliable. The machine drifts slightly to the left. Ivan, bathed in cold sweat, corrects the course with a millimeter movement, slightly braking the left clutch. The main thing is not to overpress. If the brake band squeals, they are corpses. If the track locks and skids, they will turn sideways and flip. The work is jeweled, on the fingertips, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The levers are exposed nerves. The loader sits on the floor of the fighting compartment, clutching the shell. He rocks it like a baby so the casing doesn't hit the metal floor. His eyes are closed. He is praying. Not to God, no. He is praying to physics. He is praying that the grease holds, that the mud is soft enough, that the wind doesn't clear the fog prematurely. "Lord, just not a stone under the track," he mutters, barely audibly, and this whisper drowns in the heavy, stale air of the cramped casemate. The air inside becomes heavy. It is hard to breathe. Adrenaline burns up the oxygen. The smell of sweat, grease, and fear fills every cubic centimeter of space. Voronin's heart beats so hard the throbs echo in his throat, making it hard to swallow. Suddenly, the fog outside becomes lighter. Wind. A gust of wind begins to tear the white veil. Through gaps in the murky curtain, for a split second, the outlines of bushes flying past appear. The speed is already decent. Tons of steel rush down by inertia, silently, like a phantom of vengeance. 10 kilometers an hour, Voronin notes to himself. A lot. Too fast. But they can't brake. Any braking is a squeak. It is noise. It is death. They must trust the road. Trust the calculation. The slope should become gentler in 200 meters. There, inertia will fade on its own. If the calculation is correct. If not, they will fly right out into the open space under the German's nose at full speed and without an engine. The Susie dives into a small depression. Stomachs rise to throats like on a swing. The suspension works softly. Christie's springs swallow the unevenness, but the hull still lists. Something metallic, a forgotten nut or piece of shrapnel, rolls across the floor, clinking loudly. Clink, clink, clink. "Mother," Voronin screams in his mind. The loader, showing miraculous reaction speed, covers the rolling object with his free hand, pressing it into the rubber mat. The sound cuts off. The crew exhales. They are walking on the bottom of the ocean, where any movement can wake the monster. The water pressure is the pressure of fear. It flattens the will, makes hands shake. But they continue the descent. Ahead, through the thinning gloom, a dark mass begins to emerge. It is the foot of the hill.
500 meters remain to the Ferdinand's position. The most dangerous zone is past, but the scariest part is ahead. Braking. Inertia is huge. Stopping 30 tons rolling silently is an even harder task than getting them moving. The mechanic feels it. He realizes that now he has to play giveaway with death. He needs to kill the speed without using the brakes to full power. Use the resistance of the soil. "Get ready," Voronin commands. His voice sounds like grinding. "Coming out now." The gunner sticks to the sight. His hand rests on the elevation hand wheel. His palm is wet, slippery. He wipes it on his pants, not taking his eyes off the eyepiece. The gray murk in the sight begins to take shape. Angular, hard shapes of German machinery. The descent continues. Every second stretches like rubber. Muscles cramp from tension. They are no longer people. They are part of a mechanism, executing an insane program of self-preservation through risk. One track clank, and an 88mm slug will turn them into steam. This understanding sits in the subcortex, forcing them to act with the precision of neurosurgeons. The Su-85 slides further, biting into the fog, approaching the point of no return. The silence rings. The hunt enters the final stage of approach. Inertia is a blind force. It drags 30 tons of metal forward without asking permission. The Su-85 flies downhill, and the speed borders on suicidal for blind driving. 12, maybe 15 kilometers per hour. It seems slow only on paper. Inside a steel box devoid of visibility, it feels like free-falling down an elevator shaft. Tracks rustle over wet ground, grinding gravel into flour. This sound is the rustle of death creeping on tiptoes. Suddenly, nature decides to play a cruel joke. A sharp gust of wind hits the left side like an invisible fist. The fog, which was their only armor, their only shield from German optics, begins to tear. The white veil bursts, swirls into eddies, and is carried away, revealing the wet steppe glistening with dampness. "Bitch," Voronin exhales. The word gets stuck in his throat, dry and hard. The world around clears with frightening speed, and in this enlightened world, right on course, he rises. The Ferdinand. From a distance of 400 meters, it seems huge. Not a machine, but a fortification. A gray, angular cliff clad in riveted armor plates. It stands sideways to them, majestic in its calm and absolute confidence in its own invulnerability. This is the moment of truth. A game of roulette where the stakes aren't chips, but the lives of 4 men. If the German observer looks in their direction now, it's the end. The Su-85 on an open slope, without power, without the ability to maneuver, is an ideal target. Like a hair on a platter. But the casemate of the German tank destroyer is turned to the left. The barrel of the 88mm gun, long, predatory, with its characteristic muzzle brake, looks toward the forest. Where they are expecting sound. Where, by their logic, the motors of Soviet tanks should be roaring. The Germans are listening to the forest. Their attention is focused on acoustics. They wait for the roar of diesels, the clank of tracks, the shouts of infantry. They are not expecting the silence rolling down the hill right into their flank. Voronin sees the enemy's nape. He sees toolboxes attached to the side of the casemate. He sees spare tracks hung on the armor for extra protection. He even sees the wet glint of metal. The detail is frightening. 400 meters. Pistol range for artillery of such calibers. "Ivan, kill it," the commander whispers, not tearing himself away from the periscope. "Kill it soft."
The driver begins to work the levers.
This is masterclass inertia control. You can't just slam on the brakes. The pads will screech, the tracks will lock, and the machine will drag sideways, tearing up the turf. The sound will be such that the dead will wake up. Speed must be killed by friction, measuredly, with microscopic movements. Ivan feels the machine with his spine. He lightly presses the brake bands, releases, presses again. The Susie begins to slow down. The nose dips become more perceptible. Gravity weakens on this stretch. The slope transitions into a flat plateau. The earth itself helps them stop. Scrunch. Quiet, but distinct. A stone got between the track and the drive sprocket. In the silence of the casemate, this sound is like the crunch of a breaking bone. The crew freezes. Hearts skip a beat. Gunner Petrov stops breathing. His glasses fog up instantly from tension. Voronin's gaze is riveted to the Ferdinand's tower. Will it turn? A second stretches like a rubber vein. The German gun remains motionless. The wind carries sounds away, or the German tankers are too engrossed in watching the forest. The noise of the wind in their own ears and the operation of the auxiliary generator inside the Ferdinand played into the Soviet crew's hands. The risk paid off. The machine stops completely. A last, barely noticeable jolt, and 30 tons freeze in the tall grass. Ideal position. Direct line of sight. The enemy's flank is exposed at a 90-degree angle. It is an artilleryman's dream. It is a classic execution. Voronin feels cold sweat trickling down his back. His hands tremble slightly, but it isn't fear. It is the come-down after the monstrous tension of the race. The adrenaline that drove the blood now demands action. "We've arrived," the warrant officer says quietly. End of the line. Now everything depends on the gunner. Petrov sticks to the sight. His world has narrowed to the range scale and the silhouette of the German casemate. 400 meters. Wind correction, 0. Target motion correction, 0. The target is stationary. Range conditions. But the price of a miss is death. The Ferdinand's side armor is 80 millimeters. That is a lot. But from such a distance, the 85mm BR-365 shell has enough energy to smash through this steel. The main thing is to hit a vulnerable spot. Not the track, not the gun mantlet. He needs to hit the ammo rack, the place where shells lie behind the armor, ready to turn the German machine into a volcano. The gunner turns the hand wheels. The D5S cannon slowly, millimeter by millimeter, turns to the left. The barrel seeks a bite point. The greased gears work silently. The Predator takes aim. Voronin looks at the Ferdinand's side. He sees the weld seams. He realizes that now they will break the silence so hard the earth will shudder. But this second of silence before the storm is the hardest. The enemy is alive. The enemy is dangerous. The enemy can spot them at any moment. One accidental movement of the German commander's head, one look into the side periscope, and the turret will start to turn. And then a race for survival will begin, in which the Su-85 with a killed engine has no chance. "Don't drag it out, Petrov," Voronin whispers. "Don't drag it out, son." The situation hangs by a thread. The wind drives patches of fog again, trying to hide the target, but it's too late. The silhouette is already imprinted on the retinas, fixed in the optics. The duel of nerves and mechanics has reached its climax. Silence is stretched tight as a string ready to snap at a touch. Only one step remains. One movement of a finger. One heartbeat before the thunder. Inside the self-propelled gun, time changes its density.
It no longer flows. It drips like thick oil from a punctured crankcase. A second stretches into a minute into an hour. Gunner Petrov is glued to the rubber eye cup of the TSH-15 sight. His world is now limited to the circle of optics, ruled by angular mill markings and a rangefinder scale. In this circle lives death. It is huge. From 400 meters, the Ferdinand occupies almost the entire field of view in the sight. A gray steel monolith, wet from fog. Petrov sees the rivets on the casemate armor plates. He sees the weld seams, rough, factory-made, with metal drips. He sees scratches on the paint where branches stripped the camouflage. This proximity is unnatural. Artillery doesn't fire point blank. This is butcher's work, not a sniper's. The gunner's hands lie on the aiming hand wheels. His palms are moist, slippery with sweat, but his fingers grip the bakelite handles in a death grip. Right now, he is the most important man in the machine. The mechanic did his job, delivered them to the position. The commander chose the target. The loader slammed the shell into the breech. Now everything depends on how steady the hand of yesterday's tractor driver will be. In the side, Voronin's voice rustles in the intercom. The voice is dry, tense like a taut wire. Hit under the edge of the casemate, behind the second road wheel. He has racks there, gunpowder. Petrov understands. He isn't just aiming at a silhouette. He is looking for an anatomically important point. The Ferdinand is an armored beast. Its hide is thick. Even the casemate side is 80 millimeters of cemented steel. If you hit the slope or the gun mantlet, the shell will ricochet, go into the sky like a screaming top, leaving only a dent on the armor. A guaranteed penetration is needed. He needs to reach the guts. The crosshairs crawl slowly over the enemy's hull. Elevation, traverse. The black cross settles on the gray plane of the side, just above the fender. Here, behind the armor sheet, in the cramped German fighting compartment, lie long casings with propellant charges. Cordite. Explosives. If the red-hot tungsten core or armor fragments touch the casings, physics will do the rest. Pressure inside the hull will jump to thousands of atmospheres in a fraction of a second. But the German is not a mannequin. He is alive. Suddenly, Voronin, observing through the commander's panoramic sight, goes cold. He sees movement. There, in the Ferdinand's casemate, someone reacted. Maybe caught a shadow gliding in the fog out of the corner of an eye. Maybe the intuition of an experienced crew suggested that the silence on the right had become too suspicious. The long barrel of the 88mm PaK-43 shudders. The characteristic muzzle brake, looking like a shower head, begins to shift. The Ferdinand doesn't have a rotating turret. The whole casemate, or the gun in the sponson, turns. The traverse angle is limited for the German, but it's enough. The barrel crawls slowly, with viscous inevitability, in their direction. "He sees us," Voronin exhales.
"Petrov, he sees us! Faster!"
A race of reactions begins. A race of mechanics. The German gunner spins his hand wheels, trying to catch the brazen Russian box that appeared out of nowhere in his sight. His gun is heavy. The barrel inertia is huge. Mechanisms work at the limit. The barrel crawls slowly, degree by degree, closing the safety angle. The black maw begins to look in their direction. If it stops and freezes for even a second, not even nuts will remain of the Su-85. From 400 meters, the German shell will stitch through them, engine and all, and fly further. Petrov sees this movement in the sight. The picture changes. The profile of the barrel shortens, turning into a dot. The muzzle turns toward him. It is hypnotizing. It paralyzes the will. You want to close your eyes, curl into a ball, and wait for the blow. Animal fear screams in your ear, "Run!" But there is nowhere to run.
You are trapped in a steel can.
Don't sleep!
Voronin's roar brings him to his senses.
Traverse! Catch him!
Petrov breaks the stupor. Teeth grind so hard it seems enamel is crumbling. He spins the traverse handwheel. His gun is lighter, more agile, but his hands are shaking. The crosshairs dance. It jumps to the track, then to the sky. Easy, easy, damn it, he whispers to himself, biting his lip until it bleeds. The blood is salty. This taste brings back reality. The German barrel has already covered half the way. It is looking almost at them. A couple more seconds, and the Wehrmacht gunner will press the firing pedal. They have Zeiss optics, they have training, they have orders to destroy everything Soviet. They won't miss. Petrov takes a deep breath, holds it. This is an old trick of snipers and biathletes. You need to stop the heart to stop the hands. The world freezes. The vibration of the tremors leaves. The crosshair smoothly returns to the kill spot. The black lines of the sight lie exactly on the center of the side armor plate, where, behind the metal, the pulse of the German machine beats, its ammo load. This is the beast's neck, the most vulnerable spot, covered only by armor, but not geometry. There is no slope here, a straight impact angle, perfect for an armor-piercing round. Target acquired. Petrov's voice sounds dull, like from a barrel. The German gun has almost finished turning. The black pupil of death looks straight into the Su-85's forehead. Voronin sees the muzzle brake freeze. That is the end of aiming. A shell will fly out now. Time compresses into a single burning dot. Inside the self-propelled gun, there is silence, ringing, electric. You can hear a relay click, leather creaking on a seat. You can hear a drop of condensation break from the ceiling and fall on the breech. Clink. This sound is like a starter pistol. Petrov's finger lies on the electric trigger button. Between life and death is an effort of a few grams. The contact will close. An electrical impulse will run along the wires to the primer, ignite the powder, and 9 kilograms of steel will leave the barrel. Or the German will press first. It is a lottery where the prize is life. The odds are equal. But the Russians have the first move advantage. They are already ready. The German just finished the turn. He needs a split second for stabilization, for refinement. He has a heavy barrel that is still oscillating after the stop. The Su-85's barrel froze a second ago. Voronin doesn't breathe. He looks at the gunner's back, at his tense shoulders. He mentally pushes Petrov's finger. Come on, press it, do it! The look of the German commander through the optics is probably full of horror right now. He sees a Soviet tank destroyer point blank, looking at him with its gun. He realizes he is too late. He screams at his gunner, "Fire!" But a scream flies slower than electricity. Petrov's finger presses the button. Click. This microscopic sound starts a chain reaction that can no longer be stopped. The chemistry of gunpowder takes its rights. Pressure in the barrel bore jumps to 3,000 kilograms per square centimeter. The shell tears off the rifling. Silence explodes. There is no more stealth, no whispers, only brute, monstrous force released to freedom. The climax has arrived. The outcome of the duel is decided in the hundredths of a second that separated the button press by the Soviet gunner from the German's reaction. Ballistics has delivered its verdict. Fire! Voronin exhales. It is not a shout. In the cramped space of the casemate, you don't need to shout. This word is simply closing the circuit, the last element of the algorithm. Petrov presses the trigger button. Impact. The world, which until this moment was woven from silence, The rustle of grass and the creak of nerves instantly ceases to exist. It shatters into pieces under the impact of 150 decibels. The 85mm D5S cannon barks shortly and dryly. It is not the rolling thunder of a howitzer. It is the sharp, whipping crack of a giant whip. The muzzle brake ejects jets of superheated gases to the sides, instantly blowing away the remnants of fog in front of the machine. The 30-ton self-propelled gun, standing on brakes, shudders with its whole hull as if hit in the forehead with a sledgehammer. Recoil presses the road wheels into the ground. The casing flies out of the breech with a clang, hitting the shell catcher, and falls to the floor, smoking and spreading the acrid, sour smell of burnt gunpowder. At that same moment, with a delay of a fraction of a second, invisible to the eye but existing in the laws of physics, the BR-365 shell reaches the target. 400 meters, for it is the absence of distance. It is a shot at point-blank range. The armor-piercing slug, weighing 9 kilograms, slams into the side of the Ferdinand at a speed of almost 800 meters per second. The kinetic energy of the impact is monstrous. 80 millimeters of German side armor is serious protection, but it is calculated for long-range combat, for glancing hits. Here, the impact angle is 90 degrees. The shell doesn't ricochet, it bites in. The blunt nose works like a punch, preventing the shell body from slipping, and the ballistic cap crushes, transferring all energy to the core. Steel groans. It is a sound that cannot be heard with ears. It can only be felt with the gut. The sound of tearing metal. The shell stitches through the side, punching a sheaf of red-hot fragments inside, secondary projectiles. It enters the German self-propelled gun's fighting compartment like a hot knife through butter. And it hits exactly where Voronin calculated. The racks. Inside the Ferdinand, hell begins. Red-hot metal and the shock wave ignite the propellant charges. The German casings, packed tightly along the sides, detonate in a chain reaction. This is no longer chemistry. It is the thermodynamics of catastrophe. In the closed volume of the casemate, where 6 crew members sit, pressure of thousands of atmospheres and a temperature of a couple of thousand degrees form instantly. Outwardly, it looks like a slow-motion destruction. First, thin jets of black smoke and fire burst from all cracks of the German machine, from hatches, viewports, ventilation grills. The Ferdinand seems to inflate from the inside like an overpumped balloon. Its hull, created to withstand blows from the outside, is not designed to contain an explosion of such force inside. A second. The roar of the detonation drowns out the sound of the Su-85's shot. It is a low, womb-like roar that shakes the ground under the infantry's feet a kilometer away. The weld seams of the casemate fail. The roof is blown off like a lid from a boiling pot. A heavy armor plate, weighing several tons, flies into the air, spinning like an autumn leaf, and falls into the mud 10 meters from the hull. A column of fire the height of a 5-story building erupts from the opened box. Gunpowder, oil, and fuel are burning. The massive casemate, shifted by the monstrous force of the explosion, moves on the mount, tilting to one side. The 88mm gun, the pride of the Wehrmacht, helplessly pecks the ground with its nose like a broken branch. Road wheels on the left side are ripped out with flesh. The track is torn and slides into the ditch like a snake. The Ferdinand is destroyed. Instantly. Totally. It is not a disablement, it is annihilation. The crew died the same second the ammo load detonated. They didn't even have time to realize what happened. The human nervous system is not capable of transmitting a pain signal faster than the blast wave propagates in a confined space. For them, the lights simply went out. Inside the Su-85, there is a ringing.
The crew is stunned. Petrov is still looking into the sight, although there is nothing to see there. The field of view is clogged with smoke and fire. His finger is still pressing the trigger button, though the gun has long been unloaded. He is frozen, paralyzed by the sight of what he created. Voronin tears himself away from the panoramic sight. His face is wet with sweat, hands are shaking, but now it is the tremor of the come-down.
He slowly exhales the air he seems to have held in his lungs for the last hour.
"Done," he says. His voice sounds alien, muffled as if through cotton. Ears are blocked. "Done, smokestack." The loader, who was standing with a new shell in his hands, ready to slam it into the breech in a second, slowly lowers the slug back into the rack. A second shot is not needed. There is no one to finish off. There, on the hill, remains only a blazing bonfire of iron. The driver, Ivan, clinging to the levers, finally unclamps his fingers. Red marks from the metal remain on his palms. He leans back against the seat back and closes his eyes. Darkness pulses with red circles before his eyes. "We hit it," he whispers. "We hit it." Smoke from the shot inside the machine starts to sting the eyes. Voronin opens the top hatch. Fresh air, damp and cold, bursts into the smoke-filled, sweat-soaked atmosphere of the fighting compartment. He sticks his head out.
The picture is mesmerizing in its cruel beauty.
The huge Ferdinand burns brightly and furiously. The fire hums, devouring the rubber of the tires and the remains of the fuel. Black smoke rises vertically, mixing with the gray clouds. Debris is scattered around, pieces of metal, crates torn off by the explosion. Silence returns, but it is a different silence, not pressing, not waiting. It is the silence after a storm, the silence of a cemetery where a monster has just been buried. Shooting has stopped in the forest. The infantry, who had been lying in the mud all this time, not believing their eyes, begin to slowly raise their heads. Voronin looks at the burning enemy. No joy, no triumph, only infinite fatigue and dull satisfaction from a job well done. The problem is solved. The equation balanced. Ballistics and physics proved stronger than gloomy genius and thick armor. "Combat over," the warrant officer commands into the intercom.
Turn on ventilation. The ventilator motor starts buzzing, pulling out the powder fumes.
This mundane, technical sound returns them to reality. They are alive. The machine is intact. The plan worked. The insane descent in silence, the game of hide and seek with death, all that is left behind. Ahead is only a smoking hulk and an open road. But it is too early to relax. The war is not over. Just one specific episode, one duel has ended in their favor. "Ivan," Voronin taps the driver on the shoulder with his foot. "Start the music." The engine hasn't cooled down yet. The starter shrieks and the V2 diesel, silent for that whole infinite hour, comes to life. The roar of the motor now seems like music. It sounds like a hymn of life. Vibration fills the hull again, and it is a pleasant vibration. It is the pulse of a machine ready to go further. Gunner Petrov finally tears himself away from the sight. He takes off his glasses, wipes his face with his sleeve, smearing soot.
A strange, crooked smile appears on his face. The smile of a man who looked into the abyss, and the abyss blinked first.
"Start it up!" Voronin's command sounds mundane, like an order at a factory after a shift ends. There is no more whisper in this command. No need to hide. The silence, which a minute ago was their only shield, is now torn to shreds. Driver Ivan presses the starter button. An electric howl spins the flywheel, followed by a sharp pop of compressed air.
The V2 diesel wakes up reluctantly, coughing clouds of blue-gray, oily smoke that bursts from the exhaust pipes and mixes with the fumes from the destroyed enemy. 12 cylinders catch the rhythm. The hull of the self-propelled gun begins to tremble slightly. It is the vibration of life. After an hour of dead silence, when every squeak seemed a sentence, this steady, powerful rumble seems like the best music in the world. The machine has become a machine again. Blood runs through the fuel lines again.
"Back it up, Vanya. Turn around," says Voronin, leaning back in his seat. "Enough sunbathing here."
The Su-85 jerks. The tracks, still greasy with heavy grease, slip on the mud, spraying black slurry, but then find grip. The links bite into the soil. 30 tons obediently turn on the spot, churning bushes and turf. The mechanic works the levers confidently now, roughly. He no longer needs to be a jeweler. He needs to be a tractor driver plowing the field of war. Voronin looks out of the hatch. To the left and right of the road, from the liquid mud of trenches and craters, the infantry rises. The very men who an hour ago were pressed into the earth by fear and hopelessness. Those who considered themselves dead men walking. Now they stand tall. It is not a parade formation. These are dirty, angry, tired men in soaked quilted jackets and greatcoats. But there is no stiffness in their movements anymore. The barrier is lifted.
Death, sitting on the hill, has turned into a pile of scrap metal. They run past the self-propelled gun, quickening their pace, breaking into a run. Someone adjusts a helmet on the run. Someone racks the bolt of a rifle. They don't shout pompous slogans, only the heavy tramp of hundreds of boots, the clank of gear, and the curt, angry curses of commanders driving platoons forward into the breach are heard. They need to take the height before the Germans recover. One of the infantrymen, a stocky sergeant with a bandaged hand, running past the side of the Su-85, slows down for a second. He slaps his palm hard against the sloped armor of the casemate. The sound of the slap drowns in the roar of the motor, but the gesture is clear. It is gratitude. It is an acknowledgement that 4 tankers just gave life to a whole company. Voronin notices that on the soot-covered side of the self-propelled gun, right over the oil stains and stuck mud, an inscription shines white. Someone from the infantry, while they were standing at the bottom after the shot, managed to scrawl with a piece of limestone or chalk. Crooked, jumping letters. "Thanks, Pops." The warrant officer grins. Pops. He is 32 years old, but in war, age is measured not in years, but in the number of survived attacks. Today he became older by 1 more life. He takes off his helmet. The moist, hot air of June cools his wet hair. Voronin wipes his forehead with the sleeve of his tunic, wiping away sweat mixed with soot. A black streak remains on the sleeve. Hands are still trembling slightly. Adrenaline withdrawal, the inevitable price for overexertion. He takes out a cigarette, strikes a match against the armor. The flame flares up. Tobacco begins to smolder. The first drag burns the lungs, but brings clarity. Ahead, on the hill, the Ferdinand burns out. The wind fans the flames, and they hum, devouring the remains of German grandeur. 200 millimeters of frontal armor didn't save it. The menacing cannon, capable of punching through tanks from 2 kilometers away, turned out to be useless against simple gravity and human cunning. Krupp steel lost. It lost not to other steel, but to the laws of physics multiplied by risk. German engineers foresaw everything: sheet thickness, optics, ballistics. They created an ideal fortress. But they forgot to enter a variable called Russian character into their blueprints. They didn't account for the fact that a tank can become as quiet as a falling leaf if the crew really needs to survive and win. "Comrade Warrant Officer!" Gunner Petrov's voice in the headphones sounds cheerful, almost boyish. "Where to now?" Voronin takes a drag, squints from the smoke, and looks at the road going over the hill. The fog has finally dissipated. The sun breaks through the clouds, illuminating the twisted metal and running figures of infantry. The way to Vitebsk is open. Operation Bagration continues. The Wehrmacht's spine crunches, breaking under the blows of such single pinpricks from which the general victory is assembled. "Forward!" says Voronin, throwing the butt overboard. "Catch up with the infantry. We still have a lot of work." The diesel howls, picking up Rebs. The Su-85, clanking its tracks, tears off the spot. It leaves behind the smoking carcass of the enemy, leaves behind fear and silence. Ahead is war. Dirty, heavy, deadly work. But today, they did it perfectly. The machine disappears into the dust, dissolving into the horizon. On the armor, under a layer of new mud, the white chalk inscription can still be made out. A symbol that ingenuity sometimes pierces armor better than any sub-caliber shell. The hunt is over. The predator is dead. The hunters leave for new prey.